But before we start this course, you would be required to go through our Blender beginners course, which will show you how to use Blender's UI and basic functionalities and features in Blender. Now, let's get started. We'll go to add here, go to mesh, then cylinder. Now, if you see it on the right panel, you can see that the dimensions are quite big, which is not the case for a cosmetic product. So now we'll click on S and scale it down. Something like this is a much more realistic dimension. Now we'll click on right click and do shade auto smooth. Now we'll see that the edges now have a smooth gradient and is not showing the individual faces. Now that we added the object, let's add some details to it. Cap, the bevel and the edges. So click on tab and go to edit mode, or you can go here on the object mode in the top, click on that and go to edit mode. Now we'll see that the mesh looks something like this. So firstly, we'll add some loop cuts. Now, if you go here where it says loop cut or click on Control R, now once you click on this, so here you can use the mouse wheel to increase the loop cuts like this and decrease the loop cuts. For now, we require about three loop cuts to get the shape. So first we'll add three loop cuts. Okay. Now we require just one loop cut. We'll click on this, and then once you click on it, you can move it up and down where you want. So considering that this is an FMCG product, we'll keep it somewhere here so that the top part can be the cap and the bottom part can be the body. Now let's go to edge select mode. Now we can see that this edge is selected. Now let's click on Control B, which will basically bevel it. Now we can see that it's becoming something like this. Now we can use the mouse wheel again to increase the number of cuts or decrease. So what we'll do now is make three cuts like this, then click the left mouse button. Now select only the center ring. Now how do we select the whole ring? For that you can click on Alt and select one side. Now we can see that the whole ring is selected. Now let's click on S and scale it inside slightly. So now we get something like this. This almost starts to look like a product, but you can see that the edges are sharp. So what we'll do for that is go here to modifiers, then add modifier, then we'll add a modifier called bevel modifier. Now we can see that the edges look a lot more realistic, and we can also increase and decrease the number of segments. So I've increased it to 3 here, so it looks something like this. So the shape here is good enough for us to get started, and then now we can start adding the labels, and then we'll move on to the lighting and the render. Welcome to the Blender course. In this class, we're going to take a simple FMCG product like a bottle or a jar and make it into an ad using Blender. You don't need any prior experience. We'll guide you step by step from modeling to the final render. Once you finish the course, you'll be able to create something like this, which you see on the screen right now. So now we'll start adding the materials. So now if you go to material preview mode here in the top right corner, you can see that there's no materials for this. It's completely white. So now let's go to the material menu here on the right and then click on new and add a material. So we can keep it like a dark glass material and keep the roughness to 0.05, metallic to 0.5, and then the color to a slight greenish and bluish tint, since usually glasses would be something similar. I'll just slightly increase the metallicity. Okay. Now we see that the whole thing has only one material, but we need a different material for the cap. So I'll just go to edit mode using tab or here on the top left button. Now I'll first select these faces, and then in order to keep these selected and then select the top face as well, I need to click on shift and then click on the top face. Now I'll need to select the bottom face. So in order to select the whole ring, I'll I'll hold shift, click on alt, then click on here. Now the whole cap is selected. Now in order to add a separate material for this, go here on the right and click on the plus icon and then click on new and then click on assign. Now you can see that the cap has a different material. You can keep it like a dark plastic for now. You can change it later on. Keep the roughness to 0.4. Now we need to add the label to the box, which would be your label, which would be adding to the actual product, but we'll import it here in our 3D software and add it on the bottle. That way it would replicate your actual product. Now that we've added the basic materials, we'll start by adding the label now. So usually label files would be in an image format and we would need to place it on this bottle like how it's done in an actual product. So basically it would be wrapped around the product. So now in order to make your work easier, we need to enable a pre-installed add-on called images as planes. So here go to edit, go to preferences and make sure in the add-on menu, you can search for something called images as planes. Now make sure that it's turned on and then save the preferences. Now use Shift A and add an object. If you click on Shift A, you'll get the menu. Now we can add an image and click on images as planes. Now we'll get this window where you can choose the template image of your product. I've saved it here, so I'll import this image. Now, as you can see, it's imported like this. What I need to do now is make sure that it's properly aligned with the product. So I'll scale it down. I'll bring it outside. I'll just rotate it by 180 degrees, and I'll make sure that it's somewhat aligning with the product. And then I'll show you how to wrap it around the product. So now, in order to wrap this around the product, we'll be using a modifier called shrink wrap modifier. But if you go to edit mode and see here, you'll see that this object has a lot of different faces at different angles, which is what is giving the curvature. But if you go to this and click on edit mode, you see that it's just a single face. So we won't be able to give a curvature to a single face. So what we'll need to do is add loop cuts. That way, this single plane face will have multiple different faces and it will be uh, possible for it to deform. Now let's click on Control R and increase the number of faces to, let's say there are 20 faces now. And then click again, come back to object mode. Now, if you go to edit mode and see, you can see that this label has a lot of different faces, which will help it deform and take the shape of the container. Next, we'll see how to add this to the box using a modifier. So here, we'll make sure that we have this label selected. Go to modifiers, click on add modifier, then search, then click on something called shrink wrap. Now we'll have an option called target where you need to click on the container. Okay, now we can already see that the label has taken the shape of the container, but we can see that it's also overlapping and not properly on the container. So for that, we'll need to adjust it using offset. So if you see now, you can make it come out and go in. So I'll just make sure that it's just right above outside the container. And now I see that this also has been shaded flat. I'll right click and click on shade auto smooth Now we have a smooth shading effect. I think this is slightly shifting above due to the shape. I'll just make this smaller. Now we can see that it's properly aligned. What happens sometimes is the image gets a bit compressed and it looks a bit narrow. So what you can do is click on S, or click on the label only, then click on S, then click on the axis uh, along the width. So in my case, it's X. So now we can see that we can properly adjust it based on the actual design. Once I do, I'll just left click and leave it there. Now we can see that we have something that looks very close to an actual product. So now we can make use of this in our renders. Before we do that, what you can also see that this label is not actually attached to the container. Move the container, it still stays in place, but it's shifting around because of the modifier. So in order to make sure that this is fixed to the container, I'll click on this first, the label, and then click on the container, and then press Control P, and then select object. So what it does is this is linked to this. So whenever I move this, I get this also along with this. So you can make sure that all the external parts are fixed to the same file, which would make the 3D animation process easier. And now let's start with setting up the scene and then move on to rendering. We see that this is below the origin. So what we'll do, we'll just make sure that it's on the floor and on the origin basically, something like this. Next, let's add a platform and a backdrop. So in order to keep things simple, let's just add a plane first. Go to Shift A, Mesh, and add a plane. Next, if you have gone through the basic course, you would have idea on how to extrude an edge. So go to Edit Mode, go to Edge Select Mode, click on this, which is right behind the object. Click on E, and then click on Z. So now we'll be extruding this in the Z axis. So it can be roughly somewhere around this height. Yeah. Now we can already see that it starts looking like a platform for product photo shoots. Now in order to get rid of this sharp edge, what we'll do is go back to edit mode, click on this edge, and now we have something called a bevel tool if you see on the left. So click on this, you get something like this. And now on the top left you see something called segments. Keep it to somewhere around 5. Okay. Now we can just pull this like this, and we can see that we're getting a smooth curve. Go back to object mode, then right click, click on shade auto smooth. Now it looks as like a seamless background. Next, we'll start setting up the lights. Before that, you need to make sure that you use these render settings, which will be provided in the description. And once that's set, go to rendered mode. Now it looks something like this because we haven't added any lights yet. So let's start by adding a light. Go to Shift A, then go to light, then click on area light. Now we can see that it's spawned here. Now we need to shift it above. Click on G, click on Z, and we can make it smaller and bring it slightly in the front so that the product is highlighted more. And we can tilt it towards the product using R and rotate R and rotate along X, something like this. And we can make further adjustments if required. Now we can see that things are starting to look more realistic. What we can also do is add more lights. So for this, let's add one more light. So let's keep this to the side, a little bit to the side, and scale it down a bit. And using Shift D, duplicate this, and we can bring it somewhere over here, and we can keep it at the back a bit. So that way we get a nice highlight on the edges. Make the required adjustment until you're happy. So I think something like this would look good. What I'll also do is bring this platform a bit in the front so that the background looks a lot lighter. Now we have the lighting setup, and in the next chapter, we'll move to the cameras. Now let's move on to the cameras. Before we do that, I'll show you a demonstration of how animation in 3D works. So let's go to solid view mode first. Then let's add a cube. Let's bring it to the side for now. Now you see here, you'll see that for each object you have coordinates in location, rotation, and scale, which can be keyframe. Now, for example, if I click on I and click on location, this is keyframe. This location is keyframe. So now if I move the timeline and go to, let's say, 80th keyframe, and move it over here, and now I click on I again, click on location. This location is now keyframe. Now if I go to the first keyframe and play it, we can see that it's moving from here to here. It's a similar principle for rotation and scale as well. I'll just show you a demonstration for the rotation part. Let's keyframe the rotation. This, and let's keyframe the rotation again, something like this. Now you can see that the object is rotating. So we can animate multiple properties on the same object. So for example, let's say I want this to also move while rotating. I'll keyframe the location and then go here, m- move it to where I want, and then keyframe the location again. So now it's also rotating while moving. All the objects which you see in Blender can be animated, same principles. Now let's add a camera. The camera is added. Let's clear the rotation. Let's make everything zero. Now next we'll just move it to a desired location. Now in order to view from the camera, click 0 on your numpad. So the orange border that you see here is the part which gets rendered. So let's shift this down, something like this. So I'll keep the camera movements very simple. Let's have a total of 3 camera angles. You can start with the first one, which is moving closer towards the product. So it would basically go something like this. You can either animate it from the outside, or you can or directly animate it from the camera view. So I'll just bring it back slightly to a desired location. So what we've learned in the animation basics, to make this more dynamic, we can animate the product as well. So let's animate the final position first, which would be here. Let's keyframe the location and rotation. Let's go to the first frame and then bring it up and then rotate it like a desired at a desired angle. Keyframe this. So now it's basically like a floating product. It softly lands. Could be something like this. So now what we can do, go back to the camera view, animate it to the desired angle and location. I'll start with this. I'll animate the location and rotation. Go to the 60th keyframe, go closer, rotate it so that the product is centered, keyframe it. What I'll also do is right click here, go to interpolation mode, and then keep it to linear. So what this does is it makes the camera move at constant speed rather than speeding and slowing down. So now here's a simple trick to make three scenes with the same camera. Now once you go to 60th frame, you want the next shot to start from 61st frame. Go here, then move the camera to where you want the next shot to start. So for example, I want the next shot to be like a close-up shot. So I'll move the camera to somewhere over here, and I'll go to 120. Then I'll move it like this. Probably go closer, right click, interpolation mode, and keep it to linear. Now if you play it, here's what it roughly looks like. Similarly, we can add the third shot as well, and keep the third shot as something that is ending. So I'll just make it something where the product, where the camera is zooming out, not zooming out, but it's moving back to set the frame to the final scene where you can add the text if required. So go back, shift it down if required, set the angle, and keyframe the location and rotation.
Hey everyone, how's it going? We've already covered a few topics in our previous tutorials. So in this particular video, we'll see how I created this animation. So this is what we call as product animation, and this is an AirPod, as you can see. So this is what we'll be making today. Wait, let me fix the denoiser. Of course, we are viewing this directly in the viewport, so it won't have the best quality, but you'll get a rough idea of what we're going after in this project. Camera slowly pans around the AirPod, and then we'll have a little product animation here, and this is the second shot where the product itself is moving along with the camera animation. So we'll be taking a look at how we created the environment, how I placed the AirPods, how I made the camera rig. In this case, a camera is attached to an empty. We'll see how that goes, and we'll see how I did the product animation here. I think the lighting also changes a bit during the shot. And I'll also show you how I did the ease in and ease out motion when the camera is turning. You might have seen this in a lot of product animations, and we also do this in the second shot. We'll also see how I did the depth of field in the scene, and how this basically all came together. I'll show you how it looks like when it's actually rendered. So that looks pretty good. imagine this in motion. So I'll start a new project. I think this would give you a better idea of how to do a similar project if we do everything from scratch. So first of all, I think I've already talked about this in one of my previous tutorials, but I'll show it to you again how we import a 3D object into a project. Just go here, go to append, select the project file in which you have the 3D model. In this case, this is the one. And once you're in the project file, either you can go into the collection or go in the object folder here. I just need the AirPods in the scene, so I'm going to go into the collection folder and import the AirPods here. So yeah. I think we should enlarge it a bit. You get an idea of the scale of the different objects as we're working on the project. So I think the animation has already been okay, so I'll remove the animation. Let's remove this as well. So as you can see that the entirety has been parented to this empty. So it's beneficial to parent different objects to an empty if you want to collectively move or scale or rotate an object. So in this case, the AirPod here has been parented to this empty. If I just enlarge this empty, you can see that the entirety of the 3D object is being scaled up as well. And if I quickly want to move the AirPods, I can just click on the empty here and move it. Similarly, if I want to rotate the 3D object, just press on the empty, press R, and then I can simply rotate the object as well. If I did not have the 3D model here parented to an empty, I'd have to select the entirety of the 3D model and then move it, which at this point in time this doesn't really seem that important, but when you're working on big projects this is really helpful, and it also helps to streamline your projects. As you can see that the 3D object here come under the parent here, so it also helps you organize your project a bit better. So we have our airport in the scene. Now let's talk about cameras. How do you import a camera into a scene? Press Shift A, go to camera, and then go into the camera. And if you want to control the camera from your mouse, just go into the view end panel and select camera to view. As you can see, we can control the camera now. For product visualizations, you should probably have the focal length a bit higher. I think something like 80 or 90 millimeters would do the job. Honestly, there is no universal focal length that works with every project. So in this case, I just selected 90 millimeters because for product visualizations, generally the focal length tends to be a bit higher so that we can zoom in on our object a bit more, and for product visualizations our main goal is to have the product front and center, and a higher focal length will help you achieve that. Camera is ready. Now I wouldn't recommend you to just have your camera and then move it manually and then keyframe it. I think this looks very CG like and not so appealing. I'll show you a different method of how I usually do camera animations. I learned this method from one of my friends, and ever since I've learned it, this is all I've been using in almost all of my projects, both professional and personal. So let's create a camera rig. First, to create a camera rig, you can use an empty, or you can also use a mesh, that's preferably a circle. So I'm going to import a circle here. Let's increase the vertices so it appears smooth. I think 256 would work just fine. After you have imported the circle, adjust it a bit and then apply all transform to it. Now let's import a camera. Make sure you remove all the rotation and stuff, and now adjust the rotation in a way that it's facing towards our product. I think we'll be making a vertical video for this, so select the vertical resolution, which is 1080 into 1920. Let's increase the focal length a bit. Also make sure that the camera is outside the circle, because one of our main goals of this setup is to always have the circle visible in the viewport. As we can see that it is right in the middle, or it is right at the origin of this particular entity. So by this fact we know that the AirPod is right in the middle of the frame, and this is what we want. We have a camera and it's outside the circle. Now select the camera, select the circle, Control B, Object, Keep Transform. This will parent the camera to the circle. Now when we move the circle, the camera will move with it, and if we rotate the circle, the camera will move with it. And as you can see that even if we rotate the camera, which is being rotated by the circle actually, and even if we rotate the circle, rotate the camera, our product will always be in the center. Now let's create a simple camera animation. To create the animation, I'll simply be keyframing the circle, like moving it around, or you can just rotate the circle and then keyframe it. That would work very well with a project like this. Let's rotate the circle a bit, press K, location and rotation. Let's go to 100th frame, rotate the circle again, press K, location and rotation. As simple as that. We have a simple camera animation ready. Now let's create a bit of gradient or a bit more excitement in the camera animation. You might have seen in a lot of product visualizations that the camera always speeds up a bit and then slows down at the end, or it's slow at the start and then speeds up in the middle and then slows down again towards the end of the shot. To create that, we'll be working with these two keyframes. Go to the graph editor, and here you can see the animation has been shown in a graph editor. As you can see that this is the Z rotation. So select these two key points, which by the way are the start are the first and the last keyframe in this particular shot. So you don't need to select both at the same time. Just select the first one, press S, and then increase the scale. You can do that to the last keyframe as well, or you can just select this point, press S, increase the scale a bit, so you'll have this particular shape. Now let's take a look at the camera animation again. See, I think this is a bit too extreme. This should be a bit more subtle, so it looks very professional. I think this would work. Now I think it's a little too less. Okay, that looks pretty good. This is more of a trial and error thing. You can try out different values. You can try out different rotations as well. But this is how it's usually done. So we have a simple camera animation ready. So now that we have a camera rig ready, we have a camera animation ready. Let's create a base on which these AirPods will be seated. Press Ctrl S, cursor to world origin. Control Shift A, mesh, cylinder. Increase the vertices a bit so it appears smooth. Decrease the Z scale. And by this time, I assume you already know how to do all of this stuff, but even if you don't, that's fine. So to decrease the scale, press S, and then you can just adjust the scale of the object with your mouse. And if you want to adjust the scale in a particular direction, press S. In this case, press Z, and as you can see, we are reducing the scale vertically. Now let's make sure our object is seated. Now let's make sure that our object is seated on the base. So you can go to the viewport shading and select random. So different objects have different viewport shading. This is helpful in cases where you want to avoid clipping issues, because if you have the normal material shading, it's kind of difficult to tell if there are any clipping issues or not. So go to viewport shading settings, select random air, and this is pretty easy to tell if there are any clipping issues there. Let's make sure it's not clipping or anything. You don't have to be 100% precise in product visualizations. I think this would work just fine. You can go to the modifier settings, add a subdivision modifier. Remember that subdivision modifiers can be very heavy on your systems. So yeah, as you can see. Now that we have a base ready and our AirPod is perfectly seated on the base, let's work a bit on the product animation. So now that we have a camera animation ready, we should probably work a bit on the product animation. Now that we have our AirPods ready and they are perfectly seated on a base and we have a camera ready, let's work a bit on the product animation. My vision with this product animation, as you have seen in the opening shot that I showed you in the beginning of the tutorial, I would like the lid of this case to open and expose the AirPods here, and then these AirPods will rise up from the case, and then we'll do a little usual product animation and the camera pans around it. So to achieve that, first we want this lid to open in a natural manner, and as you can see, when the rotation of an object in Blender, you should remember this, that the rotation of an object is is directly influenced by the origin of that object. So for example, if I rotate this particular object, and as you can see where its origin lies, if I rotate this object, it will only rotate from its origin. So in order to change that, we have to set the origin of this lid somewhere right here, so that this opens like this in a natural manner, and how it's supposed to open in the real world. So to change the origin of an object, it's pretty simple and straightforward in Blender. Just press shift and press right click, and you can see the cursor shifts to the position I pressed right click at. So in order to make sure that it's almost at the center, you don't have to be 100% precise with this, but I think the more precise you are, the cleaner the animation will look. So I think the center will lie somewhere right here. This is the X-ray vision, by the way. Our cursor is here. In order to set the origin of this particular object here, press right click, set origin to 3D cursor. Now as you can see, the origin of this particular 3D object, which is the lid in this case, has been set to this position. And now if we open the lid, it will open naturally. See, pretty simple stuff, but very effective and very important. Especially, this is especially important when you're making product animations. Now that our camera animation is ready, let's keyframe the opening of the lid. Select it, press K. Let's set the keyframe to location and rotation. Let's go to frame 100 RX, so that it rotates along the x-axis. Let's open it this much, so that the AirPods don't collide with the lid when they are going up and when they are getting ejected from the case. Press K, location and rotation. I think this is opening a little too soon. Yeah, I think this looks pretty good. Now that we have a camera rig ready, we have a base ready, product animation is there, simple product animation, but it's pretty effective. Now let's work a bit on the environment. For this, we will be creating an environment that's similar to the one we created a few tutorials back, in which we'll take a simple cube and then remove one of its faces, and then replace it with a simple plane with noise texture attached to it. Now let's make a cube. Simple. Set the cursor to origin, mesh, control A, mesh, cube. I have a cube. So we have a cube ready, and our scene is inside the cube. We want this to happen because we only want the light to enter from one of the faces, from one of the deleted faces, because from everywhere else the cube will be covered. To delete a face from a cube, press tab. I've already discussed this before in one of my previous tutorials, but I'll explain it again. Select the object, press tab, select the face, select option here, which is the third one. Select the face you want to delete, press delete, delete faces. As you can see, this might seem similar to one of the projects we did earlier, but this one will be a more comprehensive guide. So as you can see, let's make sure that the cube is properly situated. Also in this tutorial and in this particular scene, I want this edge and this edge to have a bit of bevel to it, so that there's a bit of a curve here and it looks gradient and looks better, because this seems very abrupt and this will look a little odd in product visualization. Now let's bevel this side first. Okay, so now when we have beveled this side, as you can see that this portion looks a bit odd, and in order to avoid this issue, I will just extend this face to the right side along the x-axis. In order to do that, just select the object, go to edit mode, press the face select mode here, select this face, G, in order to move anything in Blender, press X, and easy. Now as you can see, we only see the bevel portion here with no abrupt lines. I think we should do the same here. So in order to extend this side, we have to select these edges right here. In order to select these edges in one click, select this edge, press Alt and click, and as you can see, all of the edges have been selected. So press Alt, left click, and easy. Now press G, and let's extend this along the x-axis. In our entire camera view, only the bevel region will be visible, and this is what we want. For the lighting, we'll use Blender Sky. Go to the world settings option, new, add sky texture. I think we should change the color of the materials here. This is the scene we have now. I think this looks good, but we need some shadows in order to increase the dynamic range and emphasize on the product a bit more. So in order to add some shadows to the scene, go to mesh, add a plane, make sure it covers the entirety of this region. Now you'll see that no light is being passed through this region. Go to the materials of this plane, add a new material, go to shader editor. Now let's add a color ramp and connect the color to the alpha of the principal BSDF. Now let's add a noise texture and connect the factors of these two nodes. Now if you have the Node Wrangler add-on installed, simply press on the noise texture and press Ctrl D. This is what we're getting so far. Now after getting these values, you just have to play around with the placement of the gobo plane we just added. mess around with stuff that looks good. And this looks pretty good. I think we should probably make this matte. Yeah. So yeah, you just have to mess around with the colors and stuff, and just play around with the colors, roughness, and the metallic portions. This is what you get. Looks pretty good. Now this is just first part of this product animation. In the second part, we will not be using this case, so let's just hide it for now. Don't really need it. And let's remove this as well. Let's remove the base as well. Now we have these two AirPods. Now let's animate them a bit. This is pretty simple. You just have to manually keyframe the different positions and see what works and what doesn't, and have the same camera animation. Let's just okay. So if you have a 3D object, or if you have multiple 3D objects and they have the same pivot or same origin, just select the individual 3D object, go to set origin and origin to geometry. So this will set the origin with respect to the geometry of this particular 3D model. We should do the same for this other one. The reason why we do this is because this will make animation a lot easier. You already have an empty. This empty will help us rotate both of the AirPods in one go. Let's add a keyframe, location and rotation, 200th, press K, location and rotation, and let's rotate these two. What's this? Now, since both of these AirPods are being rotated from one pivot point, we can individually animate these as well. Add a keyframe here. You don't really need to go overboard with these animations. Anything subtle would do just fine. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Let's see how this looks like. I think we need a bit more light in this scene. Also, as you can see that we have a pretty strong depth of field effect here. And how do we make sure that the camera is always focusing on our product? In order to do that, let's add an empty plane axis, and let's parent it to this airport. If now go to the camera settings, depth of field, and select this empty. And as you can see that the depth of field is being applied to the scene. Yeah, this is pretty much it, honestly. Now the next steps, I think this depends more on your creativity and how you have to approach this scene, or how you've been instructed to approach this scene. Now that we're done with all the technicalities of the render, let's see that what settings we should use in order to render this animation. How should we export this? So to export this, you'll see an output option here, and when you go down, you have an output section here. So I think I'll make a new folder for this one, test. So I always recommend people to export your renders or your animations as PNGs, because when you're rendering your project and for any reason these your system crashes or your system shuts down or you lose power, if you're exporting directly in the MP4 format, there's a good amount of chance that you'll lose all of your progress. And this is very very important because rendering takes a lot of time, and if you don't have a decent PC or if your GPU isn't that powerful, it will take even more time. So this is one of the most important tips that I feel like a lot of people overlook. And this is the range. This is the range of frames that will be exported. I think we'll do a quick render, so decrease this. And here you can set the maximum amount of samples. So there's no hard and fast rule for number of samples. I think this is heavily dependent on your scene and how much samples does your scene really need in order to look fine. And denoising, in my opinion, open image denoise definitely looks better than optics, but optics is faster because this uses the ray tracing cores in your NVIDIA RTX GPU. One thing to note is that when you're selecting open image denoise, make sure that use GPU is checked. If that is not checked, the denoising will occur on your CPU, and that will increase the render times by quite a lot. Now that we have set the output location, we have set file format as PNG. I think for test purposes I'll decrease the sample quality. Let's just set it to 20. This is very low, by the way. You wouldn't really export any of your projects. I'm just showing you how this works. When all of this is said and done, press Ctrl F12 and your project will be rendered. As you can see, our project is being rendered here. And these are all the individual images that are being generated. See? Now that we have exported all of the images, our animation has been exported as PNG. I've opened Premiere Pro. You can use other programs as well. Resolve was pretty good, but I'll show you how to import all of the images as an animation in Premiere Pro. So go to File, Import, and I'll find the okay. So select the first image in the sequence and select the image sequence option here, and then press open. Now this will import the images as an animation. Now this might seem a little too fast for you because one of the issues I've faced in Premiere Pro is that it always imports the image sequence in 30 fps for some reason, and we know that this animation is in 24 fps. So this might be a problem in some cases when you're adding music to the scene. So your music will be synced in the Blender timeline, but when you have imported that in Premiere Pro, suddenly your music and the video will be out of sync. So in order to fix that, we know the actual frame rate of this footage. Press right click, go to modify, interpret footage, assume this frame rate and type in the exact frame rate of this footage, which is 24. Press add a type in 24, press OK, and as you can see, now this is more like it. This is the actual speed of the render. Now that you have imported this in Premiere Pro, you can add all sorts of effects: brightness, contrast, color correction, bloom, halation, all of these effects, and just export. Press Ctrl M, and then you'll be able to export your project. So this is pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, pretty comprehensive from start to finish, and I hope you had a great time. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time. Hey everyone, I hope you're doing well. Welcome back to another video, and in this one we'll be taking a look at this animation, how I created this one. We have already done some product related animation so far, a couple of those so far, but in this one this one is a bit different because this is a little step up in difficulty. I wouldn't say that this is very difficult, but this is probably intermediate level as compared to the very beginner friendly guides I did before. So let me turn off the depth of field, and this is what we'll be making today. And you might wonder how this would actually look like as a render, and this is what we're looking for. So in my opinion, that's pretty impressive, and this might seem a little impossible for a lot of Blender users, but trust me on this is not that difficult if you have your fundamentals clear, and with the support of a couple of add-ons, which are paid by the way, but I highly recommend you to get those. These couple of add-ons will exponentially increase your productivity, especially when it comes to animation. And one of those add-ons is Animax. We'll discuss this add-on in detail. So yeah, but this animation entirely isn't done in Animax. I have done a lot of manual keyframing as well, as you can see here in the viewport. This might seem a little complex, but don't worry, we'll piece it together as we are working on the animation. There are a lot of manual there's a lot of manual keyframing here as well. So let's get started. Regarding the scene, this is pretty simple. There are a few meshes here, few scooped out square meshes. I won't be delving too deep into the environment and lighting because we have pretty much done how I made similar environments in the past. and this is simple as well. We just have a few lights here, one, two, and the interior of these meshes is illuminated as well. But honestly, any type of lighting setup would work in the scene, but our main focus will be on this animation and how I achieve this look. By the way, this environment uh, won't be clearly visible in the final render, as we'll be applying a depth of field when we are finally rendering this animation. But I've disabled the depth of field in order to keep things clear, and so that every aspect of this animation is visible to you. So let's get started. I feel like it would be better if we start a new project, and this is a detailed watch that I've imported from Blender Kit. I highly recommend you to get the subscription plan of Blender Kit. It's very helpful for assets, and you even get decent scenes in there. Plenty of decent materials are also available in Blender Kit. So in order to import something from Blender Kit, you just have to install the add-on from Edit Preferences, similarly to how you install other add-ons. Now if I need a watch, let me type in Rolex. Here you can see you'll get plenty of very detailed 3D models, and this is one of the models that I've imported, and we'll be working on a similar animation that are similar to the one I showed you earlier. So first of all, we have to make sure we have to check where the origin lies of each of the individual objects of this watch. For example, the origin, by the way, you already know this, but I think it would be better if I repeat this. The origin is signified by this little yellow dot in Blender. This means that we can move our object, we can rotate or scale our object, and this will act as a pivot point of this particular 3D model. If we want to make a detailed animation that looks cohesive and that flows gracefully, we have to make sure that all of the individual meshes of this watch have their origin set to geometry. That's pretty simple to achieve. Select the object entirely. You just have to double click. In this case, the watch is parented to this empty, and this is the empty, and if I double click here, it will select the entirety. It will select all of the meshes. Okay, so all of the meshes have been selected. In order to have each of the meshes have individual origins, once you've selected all of these, right click. Okay, so if origin doesn't appear here, go to object, set origin to geometry. Easy. Now as you can see, each mesh has their separate origin. This wasn't the case before, right? So once this is achieved, we have to, now let me bring in Animax. I highly recommend you to get this add-on. This is probably one of the most powerful animation tools in Blender, and I couldn't recommend this enough. First we have to decide what we have to manually keyframe and what we have to animate by Animax. So let me show you how this works. Load in Animax, and this is our collection. Go to items, select the plus sign here, go to collection, select the collection that you want to animate. In this case, this is the collection that we want to animate. Now you'll see a bunch of presets here. You can just use the presets and then tweak them to your liking, but in this case I'll show you how it's manually done as well. Also, I would like to emphasize that you don't really need to know each and every function of each and every add-on if you want to make impressive animations in Blender. I wouldn't say that just the surface level knowledge would suffice, but even if you don't know every aspect of an add-on, that's fine as well, as long as the basics and slightly intermediate things are covered. Once we have loaded Animax, select the plus sign here, and it will show you the different type of animations you can work on. And remember that any of the options that you select here will affect this particular collection. Select the plus sign here. Let's do a transform animation. Now once I've selected the transform animation here, you'll see that a difference a different Animax container has been created in Blender. So we don't want we have our original object in the scene as well, and then we have our Animax animation object in the scene as well. We only want this particular object in the scene, which is the animated one. So disable the original original watch here, and now when we go down, you'll see a bunch of settings here, and when you scroll down enough, you'll see the location settings here. This is the location from which the animation will be affected. If I increase the value along the Z axis here, as you can see, our watch is moving up. Also, let's first take a look at time here. So once I've selected the Z value here, which is 1.21 here, this is telling Animax that after 1.21 seconds, the watch and each of its individual parts will move to this position. Initially, they are at position 0, and after a while, after the duration, which is here, after this much of duration, the entirety of this object will move to Z location. But we don't want that. We want our deconstructed watch to come together, and so that the individual parts fit in with each other. And this is what you might have seen in plenty of product animations. So in order to achieve that, select invert the time. So the initial position of the watch is this value right here. First, let me disable the class in front. As it is. Now let's see how this looks like. By the way, you can select the direction of the offset, and if you select the x-axis as the offset axis, you can see that the mesh is coming together along the x-axis right here. But if I select the y-axis as the offset, now the meshes are coming down along the y-axis. You can invert the direction as well. Now this seems very abrupt, right? Like the animation is linearly coming down and it just abruptly stops at one point. In order to fix that, check out the interpolation settings here. This is very similar to the interpolation settings you find in Blender. You have to try out different things in the interpolation because different settings will work for different projects. Let's try back in and out. Now as you can see, the animation is bouncing a bit. Let's increase the duration a bit so the animation is a bit more visible. That already looks pretty good. Now you can increase the smoothness of this particular animation. So this looks a bit more professional, right? And less cartoony. Now, as you have seen that in the initial animation I showed you, all of these individual parts were moving as well. But now when we're doing an animation through Animax, this isn't really happening. Why is that the case? That's because all of these objects have been joined together, which is not really what we want. As you saw in the initial animation I showed you at the start of the tutorial, all of these individual meshes were fading in gracefully, but this is not really the case here. See, there's no animation here. So how do we fix that? This is pretty simple as well. First of all, we have to make sure that all of these objects are separated from one another and all of them have this separate origin. How do we do that? So if you want to separate a particular object into its different loose parts, select the object, press tab, select P and separate by loose parts. Easy. Now you can see that all of the different meshes have been separated. But now we have another issue, because all of these objects have the same origin, which is not what we want when we're animating an object. In order to fix that, once we have separated each of the individual meshes, let me put these in a different collection. Let me add a collection intricate details, and these are all the separated parts. Go to right click, set origin to geometry. Now all of these individual objects have separate origins. I think we have to separate this portion as well. The outer part has already been separated. We have to separate this portion as well. How do we do that? Same as before, press tab, P by loose parts. Now add all of these to the intricate details collection. You don't have to put them in a separate collection, but I think it makes working a bit more tidy and a bit more organized. And now let's set the origin of all of these separated meshes. Similar as before, right click, set origin to geometry. See, easy stuff. I think we should do the same with this mesh as well. Tab, same as before, P, separate by loose parts, and make a new collection. Now press right click, set origin to geometry. As you can see, all the individual meshes have the separate origin. See, now let's try to animate these two collections. Collection 2, intricate details first. Okay, let me animate collection 4 first. Collection 4. Let me try a preset for quick demonstration. Let me inverse the time. See, this looks so good. This is the exact kind of animation we saw at the start. If you don't like some things, you can just select another seed. Random seed will randomize the animation. Wow. Let's do the same with the intricate details collection as well. Collection, intricate detail. I think disintegration, I love disintegration preset in Animax a lot. Select this option, this icon right here, in order to activate a preset. Let us invert the time as well. Remember to hide and disable the render in the original collection, because that would be taken care of by the Animax viewport and the render settings here. Now see. Now let's play that with the watch, entirety of the watch. That looks pretty good. I think you can do the same method with other parts as well. Just go to different parts, go to edit mode, and then separate them by loose parts, and then assign make sure that the different meshes have their separate origin, and then animate them through Animax. But this will not always work with all of your projects, and in some cases manual keyframing is the best possible way to animate. So let's try to do that here. We have a watch here. For example, this particular mesh is pretty big. This is the base of the watch right here, and this is pretty big, and even if we separate it to loose parts, you won't really get a different part, because this is all one big mesh and there are no smaller parts to separate here, right? So if you animate this through Animax, this will just appear like a big bulk of mesh, and it wouldn't look that pleasing, and it would stick out like a sore thumb in your animation. In order to avoid that, I think it would be in the best interest to just animate this manually. This is the simple usual Blender stuff. We have already covered this in one of our previous tutorials. I'll show it to you again. Let's add it to a different collection. Also, it's a good habit to get into, to assign different meshes and different animations to different collections, because you'll probably need this in certain cases, that a client requests a certain change in animation, or a certain part of the animation you don't like and some parts you do. But if all of the meshes and all of the animations are in one collection, it would be very difficult for you to make minute changes. When you have different meshes in different collections, you know which part lies where and which animation lies where. So it would be very easy for you to make specific changes in your animation. So in order to animate this particular frame, you don't really need to get all fancy, and I think all of the fancy stuff is better handled with the Animax. You can simply do a simple scale 0 to scale up animation. So how do we achieve that? Let's go to certain frame, press I, and let's go to a different keyframe, preferably at the start in this particular animation. So let's push this back a bit and scale it down to 0 so that it scales up in the animation. To scale it down to 0, press S and then press 0. Press I to keyframe it. This is the animation we get. This looks good. Let's make it a bit quicker so that it appears with the rest of the animation. I think this is a little too far back, honestly. Also, remember that you can't really move or rotate or scale objects when their scale values are 0. So, I wouldn't recommend you to put the scale to 0. Any value near 0 would be fine as well and would work just as well. Just make sure that it's not visible before you want it to be visible in your animation. Yeah, that looks fine. Also, while animating, you have to keep in mind where your camera is placed, how at what focal length it's recording at, and if certain elements are visible or not. Because I've seen a lot of people get into the habit of animating every single minute object, which is pretty unnecessary if your camera is not seeing it. I think the primary objective of your animation is to make sure that it looks good in the final render. So it doesn't really matter what methods you're using or if any of the background stuff is doing something funny. It doesn't really matter if the final animation looks good. I think this looks fine, but we can apply the same method and then separate these objects, and these objects right here. Separate these objects as well. So I think let's do that. Let's separate these. Same method as before, set origin to geometry. Same as here, so that all of the individual parts have been separated. Set origin to geometry. Similarly here, same method as before, no changes whatsoever. The same methods here. Now let's see how this looks like. That already looks a lot better. I think we could try out different stuff with Animax as well. With the initial collection, let's try disintegration animation, then invert the time. Now this is appearing a bit too soon. Now as you can see that there's a lot of clipping going on. That's nothing to worry about. That's one of the things you have to take care of while animating. In the initial animation I showed you, this is the only issue you face with Animax, because you have to manually fine tune each and every different animation so that there's no clipping involved. And even if you do your best, there will always be some clipping, but it should be to the point that it's not really visible in the final animation. Yeah, I think we have to do this in a certain way that this part of the watch appears a bit late. Let's fix that. Increase the start frame. Let's do that with the intricate details collection as well. Yeah, as you can see that this looks better with, but as we're working on it. think it would be better if we separate these parts as well. Let's let's work on these animations first. As you can see, this already looks better. This appears a bit too early here. I think we can fix that. This is in the intricate details. Yeah. And now that we have added all of these objects in a different collection, you can just animate these manually. Let's go back to our project. Let's go back to, okay, so now this now this wouldn't really now this wouldn't seem impossible to you, because you already know how all of this has been achieved. Regarding all of these rotations, I've just animated. I've just keyframed the rotations manually, and this is pretty much it. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and thank you so much for watching. I hope this was knowledgeable for you, this was something new for you, and thank you so much for your time. Hey everyone, I hope you're doing well. And so we have gone through a few tutorials by now, covered all the basics. So without wasting any more time, this is what we're going to create today. It seems complicated, but it's actually pretty easy to create. Okay, so in this tutorial, we'll be doing a product visualization. So here is the product. Let's remove all the keyframes and then make our object straight and aligned properly. So firstly, we need to create a base on which the object will be seated on. So in most product visualizations, you might have seen that we have a simple circular base. So that's probably one of the simplest things to create in Blender. So in order to create a simple base, just go to mesh, then get a cylinder. Then you could probably try increasing the vertices so that the cylinder appears a reasonably high resolution. Let's go for 256. Then press S, Z, and then reduce it, and then pull the mouse down, and then reduce the size of the cylinder. And its radius is probably a little too much, so just press S and then reduce the size. That's pretty much it. So now we'll place our object on the cylinder. So just press the cylinder once, Shift S, cursor to selected, then select our object and Shift S, selection to cursor. And then you can just make sure that the product is perfectly seated on our base. Okay, so we'll probably place our camera here. So make sure that the label is placed in the camera. Press the object R set 180. This will turn the object around. And we should probably add a camera and make sure that our product is seated right in the middle of the camera, because in most product visualizations you might have seen that the product is perfectly placed in the center, and that looks professional in the vast majority of settings. So to get a camera in your scene, just Shift A, go to camera here. If you have multiple cameras in your scene, to activate a single camera, you can press this icon right here and go to your camera setting and adjust the camera. Okay, so if you want to adjust your camera using a mouse and using the scroll wheel, just go to view and make sure this option is ticked right here, camera to view. If this is not ticked, then you won't be able to control your camera. But if it's ticked, you can simply control your camera properly. So we have a camera ready, we have a product on a base. Now let's create a cube, enlarge it using S. You can toggle the X-ray option in Blender if you want to see beyond opaque 3D models. So as you can see, so for this particular scene, we'll be removing this face of the cube. Why would that be the case? Because we don't want the global light to enter from anywhere else other than from this side. So to remove this particular face, just click on the object, press tab, select this option, select this face, delete faces. So now, as you can see, the light will only be entering from this side. Now that we have our object inside a cube and a face has been removed, just go to your camera, go to render view. Then no material has been assigned to the cube yet. We would be doing that now. So select the object, go to the material section, press new. I think something like this would be better, right? Reduce the roughness, and we already have a decent looking scene. If you also want your base to have the same material as some other object, or if you want to transfer a material from one object to another, so just press the base here, then press shift, press the other object, go to the drop down option here, copy material to select it. Now our base also has the same material as the cube. So this already looks pretty good, but we would also be adding one more plane with a noise texture. Okay, so I adjusted the colors slightly on the cube, and let's make sure that our object is perfectly seated on the cube. And I would also want the base to have the same material as the cube. We'll be adding some noise texture to the plane on the side. So to add the plane, just go to mesh, plane, then to rotate the plane vertically, then to rotate the plane, press R. If you want to rotate your object in equal increments, just press Ctrl and then rotate the object. So it will snap to a value of +5 only. So we have a plane ready here. Let's enlarge it. So let's add some noise texture to the plane. In order to add a material, just press new here, or you can press new here as well. Press new. And I think we would be needing a color ramp for this. Just have a color ramp here, attach it, and attach it to the alpha, because we would be adding a noise texture and we would want the noise texture to affect the alpha properties of this material, so that light would only be passing through small holes and small shapes. Then add a noise texture, join the factors of the color ramp and noise texture. I think we can increase the scale a bit. You could just copy these values, or you could play around with the values yourself. There is no hard and fast rule for any of this. Then so if you have the Node Wrangler add-on enabled, just press the noise texture and press Control T. This is pretty much it. Let's see how it looks now. There it is. So now you can just adjust the values to your liking, and this already looks pretty good. Now you can also adjust the plane, adjust it using G to see how you would like it. Press S. You can also change the shape of the noise, change the color slightly as well, maybe. So yeah, I think this looks pretty good. So yeah, I think this looks pretty good. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed the previous tutorial. In this one, we'll be making this scene with the product. We'll be using the same product and it's rotating slightly, and we have a pretty simple but effective scene. I think it looks pretty good. So without wasting any more time, let's get started. Okay, so this scene is actually a little simpler than the last one we did, and so we are probably familiar with the basics now. So I've already added a camera in this scene. Added a camera and an empty, which will show us where our product will be placed. So our camera is placed and it has been set at a focal length of 100. So for product visualizations, I think in most shots you would need to be on the higher side of the focal length. A higher focal length puts more emphasis on the product as compared to a lower focal length. So we've already added our camera, and for this one we won't be modeling all that much. I got these sets of photo scanned rocks. So photo scan means that they were scanned by someone else and then imported into Blender and turned into a 3D model. So these models generally tend to look the best, and they react physically to the light around them. So photoscan models are one of the quickest ways to make your renders look more realistic or authentic or more striking. Don't worry if it looks a little odd right now, because in the final render this will all come together. So already have a couple of things set up. Okay, so we already have a camera ready and the 3D models of the rock ready, and then we also have an empty here which will show us where our product needs to be. So in order to import the product the same way as last time, using append, go to the project file, select the collection, and then import the file. So I've already done that, and here is a product. So I think we should already animate the product, and it's very, very simple, honestly. I'll delete the keyframes to show it again. Okay, so This is product, and make sure that the label is in front so it's clearly visible. So to animate the product, just select the object and make sure that the label is parented to the 3D model. Just select the object, press K, location and rotation. Then let's go to 100th frame. Rotate the object slightly, maybe move it a little as well. Press K, location and rotation. And that's it. That's all you have to do. And if you want the interpolation to be linear, just select the keyframes, right click, interpolation mode linear. Then the object will be rotated and it will move in a linear fashion. Pretty simple, right? So moving to the next section, let's add a cube. Very simple stuff. Just add a cube. Maybe add one more. Press Shift D. Or if you want both of the objects to have the same properties, press Alt D, Z. Press. This looks fine. The framing of the shot seems fine. So we need to add some lights here. So for this, press the object, press this cube, Shift Z, cursor to selected, mesh, go to mesh, then add one more cube, reduce its height, then place it at one of the corners of the cube. That's it. Then select the object, the one we created just now. Go to modifiers, add modifier, array modifier. Make sure there's some distance between the object. Then the beauty of array modifier is that you can just edit the first object and all of the other objects will be affected by this one. Well, these aren't really different objects, these are just duplicates of the first one. So just adjust this one, make sure that it's properly aligned with the cube, and then this looks fine. You can add one more array modifier. Make sure we want our light object to place here as well. 0 on, make sure that the factor x is 0, factor y 1, increase it slightly. I think this looks good. Now go to the material section and press new, ignore all of this, go to emission, press 1. Let's see how this looks like. Then select the previous object, select the object we created earlier, go to new. I think we should probably turn it to black. And as you can see, we created this object using Alt plus D, so it will follow the same material properties as this one. See, pretty simple stuff, honestly. Now we need a black background. Let's go to mesh. If you quickly want to scale up your object, you can simply select your object, press S and type in a number. Let's say 10. Let's select R using along the x-axis, press Ctrl, then 90 degrees. Now go to the material section, make it black. And this is pretty much it. Okay, so this is the scene we have till now. I think these two objects are a little too big. Remember, we created an array modifier of this particular. So if we just scale this cube, the array modifier won't be following it. The object with the array modifier won't be following it. So in order to fix that, it's very simple. Just press the emission object, go to the cube that we want to resize, Control P, and parent it to the object and select keep transform. As you can see, now it's working fine. I think we can reduce the size of these two objects. Yeah, I think this looks better. So as you can see that our scene looks good, but I think it's very dimly lit. I think we need a couple of more lights, so maybe even one more area light will do. So to add one more area light, shift right click, light area. Now go to constraints, add object constraint, go to track 2, then press it here. So as you can see that our area light will always be focusing on our object. So adjust the intensity. I think that looks good. Reduce the spread of it. I think this looks pretty good. Also, if you want to give your renders a bit more depth, you can add some volume as well. As you would have seen in a lot of renders, they usually tend to use fog or something volumetric to give the scene a bit more depth. So yeah, so this is a bonus tip. Just go to mesh, add a cube, enlarge it, go to the properties of this cube, go to the shader editor of this cube, add material, delete the principal BSDF, add principal volume, add the volume to the volume section, to the volume of the material output, and play around with the density. Play with the anisotropy as well. Anisotropy affects how the light, in what angle the light passes through the volumetrics. I think that looks very good. Play with the color as well. Yeah, a pretty quick tutorial in this one as well. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you got to learn something from this, and thank you for watching. Hey everyone, I hope you're doing well. So in this tutorial we'll be making this render, or maybe something like this. Okay, I'll render it and show you how it actually looks like, because the trees in the viewport are a lot less dense than in render. So okay, so this is the final render. So we'll be doing a nature environment today, and the thing with nature environments is that you don't have to follow the tutorial one by one. Like, you can take a lot of creative liberties here. the tree placement, the mountain placement, the skybox, or use a different HDRI, and it will still look good. Whereas with other tutorials or something more technical, it seems like you have to follow the tutorial exactly. That won't really be the case here. So first of all, we have to keep in mind that foliage rendering is very expensive on the system. By expensive, I mean that rendering foliage such as trees, grass, and all that stuff takes up a lot of resources of your computer. So our one of our main goals with this particular render is to save as much processing power as possible. So for that, we will probably be using 2D planes instead of using trees with which has leaf geometry, because in this particular render we will be seeing trees from a distance. Like, these are all the trees in this render, and they are very far off, so it doesn't really make sense to render these at full resolution. You you might have also seen this phenomena happen in video games, where uh, the objects which are pretty far from the player are of lower quality, and the objects which are closer to the player are of higher quality. So in this case, we'll be creating a landscape, we'll be adding some 2D trees, but we will make them seem like they actually belong in the scene. Then we would be adding some mountains, some hills, and we will also be using an image. You can also use an HDRI, but we will be using an image in this case. So this is a render. And this is the image we will be using in this render. So yeah, as you can see, you can move it. You can probably get some high resolution versions as well, but I think this works for this particular render. So I think first I'll start a new project, and then I'll show you how to create a proper landscape, how to add 2D trees to it. Okay, so let's get started. First, I'll show you how to create a quick landscape using the sculpt mode in Blender. So first of all, if you want to create, so first of all, when you want to create a big landscape in Blender, one of the biggest difficulties you'll face is that when you're okay, I'll show it to you. I think this would be, so for example, if we have this plane right here, and if I zoom out enough, which you would probably be doing a lot when you have a bigger landscape scene, if you zoom out a lot, you'll see that your plane disappears. So the reason why this happens is because Blender is only showing us the objects which are within 1,000 meters here. So we are further than 1,000 meters from this particular 3D object, so it disappears. To avoid that, just increase this limit, let's say 5,000, and as you can see, the mesh is visible again. Also, when you're working on certain scenes, decreasing the focal length would also help you a bit, because this will help you see a lot more in your scene. So this will give you a lot more perspective. For example, if I place a cube here, and we have a focal length of 32 millimeters right now, but if it was the default 50, you wouldn't be able to see it. So yeah, 32 seems fine. You can adjust this to your liking. There's no hard and fast rule. So you already have a plane here. Let's increase its size more. Now first we would need some subdivisions as well. So you probably already know this. To subdivide a plane, select it, press tab, right click, subdivide. You'll probably be doing a few more times. Remember, the higher the subdivision, the cleaner the mesh will look. But the downside of more subdivisions is that it will be Increasing the number of subdivisions will make it more taxing on your CPU. I think this would work. If even this is too much for your system, just decrease the subdivisions. To decrease the subdivisions, go to tab A, control E, unsubdivide. Control E, unsubdivide. But I think I would leave it to this setting. So we already have a plane which has been decently subdivided. Now select the plane, go here, go to sculpt mode. Now you have a list of all the brushes here. Honestly, for landscapes, any of these would work. I think I would just use this one. This is a draw brush. You can increase the radius and increase the strength. Strength dictates how much each click of your mouse affects the plane. Okay, so this is the radius. Now you'll see I can just sculpt the plane right here. So very simple stuff. Honestly, you can create a landscape to your liking. I think this looks pretty good. Now if you feel like you overdid some of the sections, you can just click on the negative icon here and then remove some of the extra stuff you did and remove some of the extra elevation you did. I think this looks pretty good. By the way, Blender also has a quick landscape mesh. This, I think this would work as well. If you go to sculpt mode, similar stuff as before. If you want to increase the elevations, use the plus icon. If you want to decrease the elevation, use the negative option here. So as you can see, this has a lot of polygons. We won't really be needing this here. You can just select a plane here because we don't really need that much elevation. We would be using our mountain separately here. So we have a plane ready here. For this particular environment, for 2D trees, I have gone through plenty of add-ons, and one of the add-ons I can recommend to you would be alpha trees. So I think this is pretty decently priced as well. I highly recommend you to get this add-on if you want to create landscape scenes. Okay, so our mesh is ready and I'm using sculpt mode to increase the elevation at certain points and use the negative to decrease the elevation. I think this would work for demonstration purposes. So now, in order to also remember to go to the object mode, apply all transforms, because because for certain instructions Blender has some trouble when the scale hasn't been applied to a mesh. So this is just a good habit to get into. So this is a plane. Get the alpha trees add-on, plus one here. As you can see, we have something appeared here right now. Yeah. Go to new settings here, and these are our trees. Decrease the scale a bit. This is a big landscape, so decrease the scale a bit. Increase the density if you want. Yeah, then it's a little too much. These are 2D trees, but so they are not that demanding individually, but if you go overboard with the density, your system will still crash. So avoid doing that. I think this would work. Increase the scale randomness. so it looks natural. Now these are all the tree options you have. I think for this particular scene a pine tree would do just fine. Yeah. Rotate the trees. Yeah, so just rotate. I rotated the trees a bit. It should look a lot better. Let's make the plane black so it emphasizes on the tree a bit more. I think that already looks fine. We should drill the trees a bit, apply some randomness to the tilt so it looks natural. See, so this scene, if you use proper foliage like botanic or other add-ons, I think this scene would be next to impossible to do with if each of the trees had proper geometry. These are all 2D planes, right? But when we are viewing from a distance, this looks pretty good, right? There you go. And then this looks pretty good. Increase the, I mean, if you look too closely, you can see the shortcomings, but from a distance, this will look pretty good. Now, let's say we have a camera here. Let's add a camera. To add a camera, as I explained in the previous tutorial, Shift A, camera, camera. Let's crop to render region. Now that we have added a camera, one of the good things about this add-on is the ability to get the trees to face the camera itself. Let me see where that option is. Okay, this one, add camera. Now as you can see, the trees are only okay, so I'll remove the rotation so that the trees face our camera. Now as you can see, as I'm rotating the camera, the trees will be facing towards the camera itself. And in order to save rendering time, the trees which are not in the camera view are omitted from the scene. So this is to save processing power, and this will help you a lot in bigger scenes. So as you can see, as I'm zooming out, the trees are appearing from this side. As I'm zooming in, they're disappearing. So one of the other things you can do in order to make your scene more believable is to add wind. Click on this option here and amount. Just press spacebar to see how it looks like and see. I think this would look really good from distance. You can also make sure that the density isn't even, so it looks a bit more natural, because nothing in nature is evenly distributed. Click on the distribution option here, new vertex group, okay. Then exit the camera and you can let's increase the density a bit. Increase the scale a bit. reduce the spacing. And this looks pretty good. So yeah, so this was a quick tutorial on how to create a quick landscape with 2D trees without absolutely destroying your system. So let's go to our original project. Back in the project, so for this one I'll be using this HDRI. It's pretty simple. In order to import an HDRI, you probably already know this, but I'll demonstrate that again. Just go to world settings here and select this option, and you could just load your HDRIs here. So I've already done that, and I've already made a plane as I showed you in the as I just showed you before how I made the landscape. So this is the landscape I used, and I added some textures on it. As you can see, this is how the plane looks like, just how we did it before, and added some texture to it. Basic textures, you can find this anywhere, or you can just get it from Blender kit. Just go to materials here, select ground, and you can find tons of results. This is more of a trial and error thing. I think this looks good, and I've already added a camera, and this is how the scene looks like with the HDRI and the plane. So for landscapes, one of the things you can do is use images. For bigger landscapes, one of the things you can do is take multiple images and then layer it in Blender. So, and layer it in such a way that when you're seeing from your camera inside Blender, of course, those images line up and they perfectly showcase the scene. So before going to that, let us add some trees as we discussed before. Select the plane. I'll be using the alpha trees add-on. All transform plus new settings on. As you can see, the trees are visible already. So we would be using the camera here so that the trees are facing the camera itself, as we discussed before, and anything that's not in the camera's view, any 2D tree that's not in the camera's view will be omitted out. Increase, I think that's a little too much. Decrease the scale a bit. Add some trees. As you can see, even with 2D trees, this is so demanding, but yeah, that looks pretty good. But I think I should reduce the density further because this is getting pretty laggy. I think this is more of a trial and error thing. You would have to see what works and what doesn't work with your scene. So I would probably experiment with this a bit and then get back to you when this is done. After a lot of trial and error, this is what I got. I've kept the density low in the viewport, but when I'll render it, I'll increase the density again and it will look fine. Now, in order to give a scene more depth, I'll be adding some fog. So these are some of the fog plates that I found online, and I've placed them in such a manner that they are perpendicularly aligned to the camera's view. As you can see, they are pretty, or you could probably just create a plane go to material, decrease the opacity a bit, and then you can just add a color add to the alpha portion. So the fog gives the scene a lot more depth. If I just remove the fog, it looks like this. Now, regarding landscapes, you can just go on Sketchfab, or you can search on Blender Kit for different models of mountains and hills, and you'll probably get a lot of results. You don't really have to make everything from scratch in your project. If you just want to do it quickly, you can spend that time searching for better assets or optimizing your scene. So now we have a fog plane ready. Just go to Blender Kit, search mountains. You'll probably get a lot of results here. You can just drag and drop them into your project. I've already done that, added a volcano in my project. So this is how it looks like when viewed from distance. I think the HDRI complements the volcano very well. You can use this method, or you can also get 2D planes. I think this looks pretty good. You could try adding mountains from here as well, or just get 2D planes and do that as well. Similarly, how I got fog planes, I also went on Google and then searched for 2D images of mountains, and this is what I got. These are all separate images. Remove the fog planes a bit. These are all separate images, just simple images. Okay, so wait, I'll also show you how to project an image to a particular plane. So if you want to project an image to a plane, it's pretty simple, as I've already done here and all the fog planes. Just press Shift A, image, mesh plane, and then select the image you want. That's pretty much it. And as you can see, I've added the 2D mountains, and the volcano is a 3D model. You can also replace the 2D images here, or just adjust it to your liking. You can adjust, or you can just replace the 2D images here with 3D model, but this would work as well, as we are not really moving the camera. This illusion would break if we just pan the camera, but we would not be doing that in this tutorial. So fog is ready, our 2D mountains are ready. Now we need a fog, or we need some volumetrics in the scene so that it covers the entirety and brings it all together. Like this is what we usually do in music as well. After we have mixed the track, we process all of the files as bulk so that it all comes together. Like this looks fine, but each of the elements still look kind of disjointed from one another. So in order to fix that, I think let's add a volumetrics. For that, we would need a cube. Shift A, mesh, cube. Increase the size of the cube. I think we did this in the previous tutorial as well. Go to shader editor, new, delete the principal PSDF, shift A, principal volume, attach the volume to the volume node of the material output, and play with the settings here, and you would get a scene. I've already done that, so I won't be doing that again. So this is what I got. Yeah, so I've adjusted the size of the cube so that it covers the entire area. This is how it looks like. Let's switch to timeline here. This is how it looks like now. I think that's pretty much it. Okay, so for one last thing to bring it all together, I got a huge image of a mountain with sky. You can also use HDRI for this one, but I think this works well. So this is the image I got. I have tilted it slightly. You can just play around with the rotation, and this is how it looks like. I think this looks pretty good. I will also show you what happens if you use an HDRI here. Let's say search for an open plane, open world. Let's say use this HDRI. See, I think this looks nice as well. So now you just have to play around with the height of the HDRI and rotate it a bit so it fits in perfectly. I think it will look odd at first when you just start importing HDRI and see your scenes, but with some adjustments, this would look very good. So yeah, I think we would be using an image instead. Let's see how it looks like in the final render. So this looks pretty good. And I've used alpha trees in order to cover the entire landscape region, and then use 2D images for the mountain. This is a 3D model, 2D images again, or you could simply use 3D models here as well for the mountains. There are over 100 ways you can still improve this render, but this will give you a good baseline to work on, right? I think this looks nice. Let's see if we can add some 3D models of the mountains, and let's see if that would make our render look a little different. Okay, so sometimes this happens with Blender Kit that you need to restart the project. So I'll do that now and get back to you. Okay, so I'm back, guys. I have imported I've imported quite a bit of mountains from Blender Kit. So yeah. I think this is just a bonus tip. If you quickly want to move an object from one collection to another, just press on it, press M, and then you can just select whichever collection you want to send it to. So as you can, let's adjust the mountains a bit. You can also play around with the scale. Press S, press Z, and then you can increase the elevation. I think one of the issues you will face with 3D models in mountains is that, for example, this is this is the model we're using, and if I remove any rotation and if you view from the camera, you'll see that this portion of the mountain, this portion would be visible, and you don't really want that in your renders. So in order to fix that, it's pretty simple. Just rotate it so that that portion is invisible. This is pretty much it. Let's see how this looks like. Okay. So yeah, I think this could work, but as I said before, this is a lot of trial and error. You have to see which models work and which don't. And this looks good. I think this is not bad, honestly. This could work. So as you can see, this looks fine, but I think the 2D images look better in this particular case. So there's no hard and fast rule. This could work, this may not. I think this looks good as well. Let's see how it looks like in the final render. Okay, not bad, honestly. This looks good. So yeah, this was a quick but not so quick tutorial on how you create landscapes, and I hope this was helpful, and I hope you have a great day and happy learning.